Wagwan. GTA 5 is, in my opinion, an amazing game with an incredible story. The mission design in particular stands out. In GTA 5, we moved from the pattern drive, shoot, then drive again, which was ever present in the previous entries. The developers give us a unique, well thought out and engaging concept in each mission, often involving a unique in-game mechanic. But yeah, let's pause on well thought out, cause gameplay wise, yeah, they are very well thought out. It's really hard to name a mission that would be frustrating or boring.
Did someone say yoga?
Well, fine. But I mean, whatever you want to say about yoga, and no matter how much it doesn't fit the narrative of GTA, I think it's still a really cool and unique addition to the game's world and story. And it actually fits Michael's plotline perfectly. Like, it's still a really cool mission concept. Not every mission has to have explosions, automatic weapons, robberies, and gang wars, and I think it's really cool to have that contrast. But we're not here to talk about that, because see, as much as gameplay wise, the missions in GTA are top notch, logic wise, it's very often pure fantasy, and that's what I'm gonna show you today. And actually, we had a glimpse of that in my video why the ending of GTA 5 doesn't make any sense. So let me show you what I mean with specific examples. First of all, the mission Dead Man Walking. In this mission, Dave, the FIB agent, wants Michael to get access to the morgue controlled by the IAA, a rival government agency to FIB, in order to verify if the target of both agencies is indeed dead as the IAA have claimed. If he's really dead, Michael should find his body in the morgue, and if not, then they're full of crap. And that part is fine. Like, the story makes sense. Like, I don't see no issues here. But the execution of this mission? Well, it gets wild, innit? So, of course the IAA ain't just gonna let Michael in through the main door. So they gotta think of a plan on how to get there unnoticed, Michael and Dave, right? And here's where things lose touch with reality completely. Because Dave gets a brilliant idea of knocking Michael out so he seems dead, so the morgue accepts him. And like, that's such an extreme simplification. Let's start with the fact that, from what I read, there's no such thing as a save knockout. Like, the films and series and video games do it a lot, but it's not really a thing. It's Hollywood fantasy, which looks great, but isn't real. If someone loses consciousness due to a head blow, it means they've suffered some kind of brain damage. So the sole fact that Michael lost consciousness isn't really a nonsensical thing, but the fact that he woke up a few hours later with absolutely no health problems in his best shape is just not how it run in real life. Even more so, even if we assume that Michael was a really rare case and managed to survive a head blow without no health implications, it's still weird that he didn't skin Dave alive after he woke up. I mean, Dave's just basically made a 90% failure gamble that Michael's gonna survive at all, because it's also not hard to just straight up kill someone with a head blow.
Fucking dead, bruv. You killed him, blood.
But that he's gonna walk out of it without any serious health issues. Michael should have been pissed off at him mad. But yeah, that one is understandable, right? It's an established thing, even if it's not real, people are used to it. It doesn't ruin the atmosphere. It looks like it makes sense, even if it doesn't. Fine. But that's far from everything. What I really admire about Dave's confidence in this cutscene is that he knocked Michael out before he even told him what to do. In the game, Michael gets hit, hits the floor, and then only loses consciousness about a few seconds later. In those few seconds, Dave actually tells him what's the plan. Not before, in those few seconds. And Dave really took a mad gamble here because he assumed that Michael wouldn't pass away instantly, that he would actually be still capable of paying attention to what he's saying, and there were also a few more crazy assumptions to which we'll get to later. First of all, there's also no such thing as a delayed knockout either. If you get hit in the head and your brain suffers an impact, it's instantly lights off. Second of all, even if we turn a blind eye to that, it'd still be hard to believe that Michael would actually understand a word of Dave in those few seconds while he was losing consciousness. I mean, picture this. You just got hit in the head by your ally who was just about to tell you what's the plan. Michael wouldn't only be completely shocked, confused, but also the hit in the head could completely blur his awareness, and it's really a miracle that Michael actually heard what Dave told him. So as you can see, Dave's decision making was like betting on San Marino to win the World Cup. And I'm still not finished here, because after the screen fades out, Michael wakes up in the morgue on an operational bed, just about to be cut open by some doctors. But let's pause on that and let's try to figure out how on earth he got in this position. It assumes the morgue accepting a living person into the morgue. Like, I don't know if Dave called an ambulance and said he found a guy lying on the floor or what he done, but someone had to pick Michael up, put him into a bag and drive him to the morgue. To start off, Michael could have potentially suffocated in the body bag in the first place. Then he'd have gone through some initial examinations where even a random person on the street would have noticed that he was alive. But even if not, he'd have then got refrigerated before autopsy, which would have again potentially killed him or at least caused a severe hypothermia. Actually, I think the game is trying to explain that, because it implies Dave has a contact which turned off the electricity in the morgue while Michael was in there to ease his escape.
I got a guy who can cut the power to give you some help, but you'll have to get upstairs if you're gonna get out.
But I don't think that guy was Dave's contact within the morgue, because otherwise he could have just asked them to verify the body. Therefore, I don't think that contact had the power to actually pick up Michael, drive him to the morgue, and skip all the examinations and get him straight onto an operational bed. So I think despite that fact, it still doesn't make sense. And then of course, Michael, the luckiest mark of her life, woke up after all this, all good, about half a minute before the doctors would have cut him open. And indifferent to the fact that he's just suffered brain damage, nearly suffocated, and that his body's on the 3rd degree of hypothermia, gets up and knocks out a doctor and a guard like a pro hitman in top form. I also love how Rockstar simplifies certain technical aspects of the story. Like, of course there is GTA Online hacking, but yeah, that you can absolutely turn a blind eye to, because it is after all just a video game, and putting the actual hacking mechanism into the game would probably be way too complicated and therefore irritating. But I've always let out a laugh whenever I was doing the offshore Merryweather Heist. There, we're stealing a multi-million government nuclear weapon off Merryweather. The weapon is situated at a random spot, relatively random spot, at the bottom of the ocean. A multi-million government nuclear weapon at the bottom of the ocean. And Trevor locates it using a system app on his phone. I'm sorry, I just don't know what to say about that, to be fair. And now, surely the most absurd mission in the entire series, minor turbulence. Well, more like major nonsense. Trevor plans to hijack a Merryweather cargo jet. He ultimately succeeds, and essentially every single part of that mission is as absurd as it gets. First of all, the cargo jet, which normally would fly at the altitude of at least several thousand meters above ground, is flying incredibly low in that mission. The speed is also ridiculous, because in real life, a cargo jet like that would travel with a speed of around 500 kilometers per hour. Actually, I later realized that the game here actually is also trying to explain that by saying that the cargo jet is in the holding pattern.
On to trouble! The Merryweather plane is in a holding pattern to the west.
The holding pattern is like a way of flying when a plane is waiting for clearance to land on an airport, or has to wait for another plane to pass to not crash or something like that. And in those holding patterns, indeed the speed and the altitude are considerably lower than during a normal flight. But still, The cargo jet in the game flies way below even that what a plane would fly at while being in a holding pattern. I'm sorry for that explanation, but I hope it makes some sense. The point is that it still doesn't make sense, at least from what I read. Meanwhile, Trevor catches up with the plane in a bloody crop duster, which, if the cargo plane flew at a reasonable altitude and with a realistic speed, would not even approach to be close to be possible. The reaction of the jet crew is even more ridiculous. They decide to open up the rear ramp and the soldiers just casually walk onto it and start firing rockets at Trevor's crop duster. You know how it would end up in real life? As soon as the ramp would open, everything inside that wasn't tied with strong harnesses would be violently flung out of the plane instantly, including them soldiers. The speed that the plane travels with, the air pressure around the place, like, it would be huge. The rockets that they fire travel as if we were on the ground, completely ignoring the sheer speed we're traveling with and extremely violent air movements. And just as you'd start to think it can't get any more ridiculous, Trevor decides to fly into the cargo jet with the crop duster, park it, get out and start a shootout with the Merryweather, with the ramp still being wide open. It's basically a GTA 5 version of the freefall mission from GTSA, but the absurd was turned up to the maximum volume. Yeah, and then Trevor hijacks the plane and heads back to the airport. But before he can get there, the plane gets shot down by government jets. Trevor then, equally ridiculously as he entered, or even more because this time the plane is out of control and goes through mad turbulence, leaves the plane through the rear ramp and parachutes to safety. The plane crashes into a lake. The plane was completely idiotically shot down above a populated area. It could have hit anywhere as it was completely out of control. If it hit sandy shores, village gone. It would be gone. Now later when I look at it, I actually think I got quite carried away here. Maybe not the entire village would have been destroyed, but the point is it would cause some serious damages. But it hit the lake instead, and well, it's not exactly better like that. The fuel, the chemicals in the weapons carried by the plane, the engine oil, and a dozen other plane things would basically irreversibly intoxicate the entire lake for a long time. Yeah, and it seems I was just very overexcited when I was writing that script. Of course, here, yeah, I know I was carried away again. But again, the point is, serious damage would have been caused. And that was ridiculous. In real life, no authority would shoot down a plane of that scale over a populated area. It would just simply be self-sabotage. And the best part is that the mission doesn't even try to hide the absurd. The dialogue mentions that a crop duster should never be able to catch up with a cargo plane.
You know, the cargo plane's got 4 jets, a 200-foot wingspan.
Yeah, and I'm in a crop duster. This is something I'm acutely aware of. Enough!
The cars in the plane actually fall out of the plane through the rear ramp, which exposes that Rockstar perfectly knew that the air pressure would be very much there, yet somehow the soldiers and Trevor himself remain completely unaffected. And Trevor even says to the soldiers, to the jet pilots, that they wouldn't shoot him down because of the potential ground casualties anyway.
Hey, you wouldn't shoot me down anyway. Think of the ground casualties.
Like, this mission is just laughing at itself, but when you're immersed into gameplay, you just don't notice any of that somehow. Not long after the major nonsense mission, we have the mission Derailed.
Merryweather fleet's here, bro!
Which is okay, maybe not equally ridiculous. It's hard to beat minor turbulence, but still very ridiculous. The mission starts with Trevor having to jump onto a moving cargo train on a motorbike, which even for a trained professional stuntman would be suicide. Not only that, he then goes on to drive on the train on the motorbike, somehow not crashing, driving over all the gaps between the carriages, and then as he's approaching the locomotive, jumps off the bike at high speed while still atop of the train without falling off it. I seriously don't understand why Trevor troubles himself with all those drug deals and bank heists. He should be a ninja. Anyway, it gets even funnier once we get to the bridge. There's a huge train crash. By the way, I'm wondering, was that the actual plan of Trevor? Like, seriously, he planned to crash the train against another train and managed to time it perfectly so the trains crash at the bridge, like exactly at the bridge at which he asked Michael to wait for him? That's kind of impressive if it wasn't a coincidence. Anyway, Trevor jumps off the train in the last moment and falls off around, I don't know, 30, 40 meters into the water, somehow not killing himself, and then, by a miracle of God, none of the big ass carriages falling from the sky hit him. None. Everything just falls around him. And then, out of several dozen carriages of a train he sees for the first time, Trevor somehow knows which exact one carries the loot they want and somehow manages to calculate that it's gonna be one of those that fell down, because not all of them did, of course.
The score's in the orange container. Plant the charge, blow the doors.
Nothing makes sense here. It's complete fantasy. Yeah, and I think the best thing about it is that we just don't notice while playing. Like, most of us will just completely ignore all the nonsense Rockstar's throwing at us. It doesn't make the game any worse. It is a video game after all. You know, it's not meant to be realistic and always make perfect sense. But I think it's funny when you realize how much nonsense a lot of us completely skipped in a story where you can get immersed into. And somehow that immersion isn't ruined by the sheer fullness we face in many missions. That's actually an incredible achievement of Rockstar. To make blatant fantasy without no one ever noticing during casual gameplay is a real feat. Anyway, let me know if you agree with my points, cause maybe I'm missing something here, maybe some things I called out make perfect sense. Like the video if you enjoyed it, thanks for watching, respect.